Hey guys, tonight we're going to talk about why you absolutely would not survive a medieval love triangle. And I'm not talking about the emotional devastation of watching your crush choose someone else while you eat ice cream straight from the container at 2 a.m. No, I'm talking about actual, literal, you are going to die consequences that would make modern dating apps look like a peaceful meditation retreat. You see, medieval love triangles weren't just about awkward dinner parties where you had to sit across from your ex and their new partner while pretending everything was fine. These were full-contact emotional bloodbaths where the loser often ended up, well, actually bleeding out of their body until they died. Think about it this way. You know how stressful it is when you accidentally like your ex's Instagram post from 3 years ago. Now imagine that same level of panic, except instead of frantically unliking it and hoping that they didn't get a notification, you're frantically trying to find a good hiding spot because someone just challenged you to a duel with actual swords, sharp ones, that have been used to kill people before. Medieval society had this absolutely wild concept that romantic disputes should be settled through violence, public humiliation, or elaborate schemes that would make reality TV producers weep with joy. They took the phrase, all's fair in love and war, and decided to combine both parts into one horrifying experience that smelled like horse manure and regret. But here's the thing that really gets me. They somehow managed to make love triangles even more complicated than they are today. And that's saying something, because modern love triangles already involve screenshot evidence, mutual friends taking sides, and passive-aggressive social media posts that everyone pretends to not understand but absolutely do. Medieval love triangles involve dowries, family honour, political alliances, religious implications, and sometimes actual armies. You couldn't just block someone and move on with your life. Oh no, that would be too simple. Instead, you had to navigate a social minefield where one wrong move could result in excommunication, exile, or becoming intimately acquainted with the business end of a mace. But before going any further, why don't you drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from while you're falling asleep or driving through the night. It's genuinely fascinating to know who's out there absorbing these ridiculous historical disasters while trying to catch some rest or stay awake on a long road trip. Now, you might be thinking, come on, how bad could it really be? People have always fallen in love with the wrong person at the wrong time. And sure, that's true, but medieval people took romantic drama and turned it into an extreme sport where the prize was either marriage or death, with very little middle ground. Let's start with something that would absolutely destroy you in medieval times, the concept of choice. You know that moment when you're standing in the cereal aisle, overwhelmed by 47 different types of basically the same wheat squares? Medieval people would look at that and think you were living in paradise. Because here's the thing about medieval love triangles that would immediately eliminate you from the gene pool. You didn't get to choose who you loved you, or who you married. Your parents made those decisions based on factors like land ownership, political connections, and whether your potential spouse's family owned enough sheep to make the alliance worthwhile. So imagine you're a medieval person and you've somehow managed to fall into a love triangle. Congratulations! You've just committed social suicide with a side of actual potential suicide. Because now you're not just dealing with hurt feelings and awkward encounters at the local tavern. You're dealing with families who view your romantic confusion as a direct threat to their economic stability and social standing. Let's say you're a young woman named Eleanor, and you've caught the attention of 2 suitors. Sounds romantic, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Literally dead wrong. Because both of these men have families who have already started negotiating bride prices and planning which parcels of land will change hands when you get married. The first suitor, let's call him Sir Geoffrey, looks like he hasn't seen soap since the Crusades and has the kind of teeth that would make a jack-o'-lantern self-conscious. But his family owns half the county and has connections to the royal court. His breath smells like he's been gargling with water from a moat, but he can offer your family political protection and enough wealth to keep everyone fed through the winter. The second suitor, Sir Richard, is actually pleasant to look at and can hold a conversation about something other than how many peasants he owns. He even bathes occasionally, which in medieval times was basically like being a supermodel with a PhD. But his family's fortune is newer, Their land holdings are smaller, and there are whispers that his grandfather might have been a merchant. The horror. Now here's where you would absolutely fail as a medieval person. You think you get to have feelings about this situation. You think your personal preferences matter. You think you can just choose based on who you actually like. Oh, sweet summer child. Your feelings are about as relevant to this decision as a chocolate teapot. Your family has already started calculating dowries, and both suitors' families are making plans based on the assumption that their son will be the chosen one. This isn't a romantic comedy where everyone learns valuable lessons about love. This is a high-stakes negotiation where your personal happiness is worth approximately the same as yesterday's breadcrumbs. But wait, it gets worse, because while you're having these totally inappropriate feelings about actually liking one person more than the other, word is spreading through the community faster than gossip at a high school reunion. Everyone knows about your situation, and everyone has opinions about what you should do. The local priest is concerned about the moral implications of your indecision. The village elders are worried about the political ramifications. Your mother is calculating which alliance would be most beneficial for your siblings' future marriage prospects. And your father is probably wondering if he can somehow arrange for both suitors to have hunting accidents so he doesn't have to choose sides and risk making powerful enemies. Now here's where medieval love triangles would absolutely finish you off. The part where everyone involved decides that violence is not only acceptable but actually expected. You know how modern dating sometimes feels like a battlefield? Medieval dating actually was one. Because once you're in a love triangle situation, the two men involved can't just accept that sometimes these things happen and move on with their lives like mature adults. Oh no, that would be far too reasonable. Instead, they have to prove their worthiness through various forms of sanctioned violence that would make MMA fighters nervous. First, there's the classic duel. Not the kind where you stand back to back, take 10 paces, and fire pistols while hoping your aim is better than your opponent's. No, this is the medieval version, which involves swords, maces, or whatever sharp objects happen to be lying around, and continues until someone is either dead or too injured to continue fighting. Picture this: Sir Geoffrey and Sir Richard meet at dawn in a field outside town. Half the village has shown up to watch, because medieval people treated duels like we treat Netflix premieres. There's probably someone selling meat pies and ale, because nothing says a romantic gesture like concession stand snacks at a fight to the death. The two men are wearing armour that weighs more than a small car and carrying weapons that could probably cut through a tree trunk. They're about to beat each other senseless over your hand in marriage, and you're expected to watch this happen, and then graciously accept whichever blood-covered survivor emerges victorious. But here's the part that would really get you. You're supposed to be flattered by this. You're supposed to see two men trying to murder each other over you and think, how romantic. They care so much about winning my affections that they're willing to risk traumatic brain injuries. And if you're thinking, well, at least it would be over quickly, think again. Because medieval duels could go on for hours. These men are fighting in full armour, swinging heavy weapons in whatever weather happens to be occurring that day. They're going to get tired, sloppy, and increasingly desperate as the fight drags on. Meanwhile, you're standing there watching two people you supposedly care about trying to turn each other into human hamburger, and you're not allowed to intervene, call it off, or suggest that maybe there's a more civilized way to handle this situation. You just have to stand there and watch, probably while wearing your nicest dress and trying to look appropriately maiden-like. But duels weren't the only option. Sometimes the competition took the form of tournaments, which were basically organised violence with more pageantry and better catering. The suitors would compete in various events designed to showcase their martial prowess, like jousting, sword fighting, and other activities that had a high probability of resulting in serious injury or death. Imagine trying to enjoy a tournament knowing that the outcome would determine who you'd be spending the rest of your life with. Every time someone got knocked off their horse or took a particularly brutal hit, you'd have to calculate whether you were hoping they'd win or lose, and then feel guilty about either option. And here's the really twisted part. If the wrong person won, you still had to marry them. There was no best 2 out of 3, or let's try a different competition. Once the violence was over and someone emerged victorious, that was it. Your romantic fate had been decided by whoever was better at hitting people with metal objects. The social pressure was absolutely crushing. Everyone expected you to be grateful that these men were willing to risk their lives for you, regardless of whether you actually wanted them to do that. If you seemed anything less than thrilled about the whole arrangement, people would question your character, your family's honour, and probably your basic human decency. But here's where medieval love triangles would really finish you off. The moment you realise that your personal romantic drama has somehow become a matter of international politics. You know how exhausting it is when your relationship status becomes the subject of family dinner conversations. Try having your love life discussed in royal courts and diplomatic meetings. Because medieval love triangles weren't just personal matters. They were political events that could affect trade agreements, military alliances, and the balance of power between entire regions. Your inability to choose between two suitors wasn't just causing you emotional distress. It was potentially destabilising the local economy and threatening the peace between neighbouring territories. Let's say Sir Geoffrey's family has connections to the French court, while Sir Richard's family has ties to the Holy Roman Empire. Congratulations, your romantic indecision has now become a proxy conflict in a much larger political struggle. Diplomats are getting involved. Letters are being sent to foreign capitals. Someone is probably drawing up contingency plans for what to do if your decision causes a diplomatic incident. Your father is receiving visits from men who wear expensive clothes and speaking carefully measured sentences about the broader implications of your choice. Your mother is being invited to tea by women who ask seemingly innocent questions about your preferences while taking mental notes for their husband's political calculations. Meanwhile, you're trying to figure out if you actually like either of these men, or if you're just caught up in the drama of the situation. But every day that passes without a decision makes the political situation more complicated. Merchants are starting to worry about trade routes. Military commanders are discussing troop movements. Religious leaders are debating the theological implications of different alliance structures. And here's the part that would absolutely break your medieval brain. Everyone keeps telling you how lucky you are to be in this position. What a wonderful problem to have, and they say, as if being the centre of an international incident is some kind of blessing. Two such fine suitors competing for your hand, they continue, while completely ignoring the fact that you didn't ask for any of this, and would prefer to just live your life without causing potential wars. The pressure to make the right choice becomes overwhelming, but nobody can agree on what the right choice actually is. Your family wants you to choose based on what's best for their political and economic interests. The church wants you to choose based on moral and religious considerations. The local nobility wants you to choose based on what will maintain stability in the region. But here's the really insidious part. Everyone keeps insisting that you should choose based on love, while simultaneously making it clear that choosing the wrong person for emotional reasons would be selfish and irresponsible. You're supposed to fall in love with whichever option makes the most sense politically, economically, and socially. It's like being told you can order anything you want from a restaurant menu, but also being informed that most of the options will result in food poisoning, bankruptcy, or social exile. Technically, you have a choice, but practically speaking, there's only one acceptable decision, and if you think the pressure is bad now, just wait until you actually make a choice. Because whichever suitor you reject isn't going to just gracefully accept defeat and wish you well in your future endeavours. His family is going to be furious about the political and economic implications of your decision. They might demand compensation for the resources they invested in pursuing the match. They might withdraw from existing agreements with your family. They might even decide that your rejection is grounds for some form of retaliation. The rejected suitor himself might decide that if he can't have you, nobody can. Medieval people had some truly creative approaches to dealing with romantic disappointment, and most of them involved varying degrees of violence, public humiliation, or elaborate revenge schemes that could drag on for years. And finally, here's the part of medieval love triangles that would absolutely finish you off: the aftermath. You know how modern breakups can be messy, with awkward encounters at coffee shops and complicated social media situations? Medieval love triangle resolutions were like that, except with the added bonus of potential blood feuds, economic warfare, and the kind of long-term consequences that could affect your great-grandchildren. Let's say you've finally made your choice. Congratulations, you've survived the political pressure, the family negotiations, and the violent competitions. You've picked Sir Geoffrey with his questionable hygiene but excellent landholdings. You think the hard part is over. Oh, you sweet, naive, medieval person. The hard part is just beginning. Because Sir Richard and his family aren't going to just accept this decision and move on with their lives. They've invested months, maybe years, in pursuing this match. They've spent money on gifts, political manoeuvring, and probably several suits of armour for various competitions. They've made promises to their own allies based on the assumption that this marriage would happen. Now they're facing not just romantic rejection, but economic loss, political embarrassment, and the need to explain to all their associates why their carefully laid plans have fallen apart. And medieval people didn't handle this kind of disappointment with therapy and self-reflection. They handled it with grudges that could last for generations. Sir Richard might decide that your rejection is grounds for a blood feud with your new husband's family. This isn't just angry social media posts and passive-aggressive comments at parties. This is actual ongoing conflict that could involve property disputes, trade disruptions, and periodic attempts at violence. Your wedding to Sir Geoffrey, which should be the happy ending to this whole mess, is instead going to be a tense political event where everyone is watching for signs of trouble. The guest list becomes a diplomatic nightmare. Do you invite Sir Richard's family? If you don't, it's an insult that could escalate the conflict. If you do, there's a real possibility that someone will start a fight during the reception. The ceremony itself is probably going to involve more security than a presidential inauguration. Your new husband's family will be watching for signs of sabotage or disruption. Your family will be trying to project confidence while secretly worrying about retaliation. The local authorities will be on high alert for anything that could turn your wedding into a small war. And once you're married, the problems don't end. Your new husband is going to be constantly looking over his shoulder, wondering if Sir Richard and his allies are planning some form of revenge. Every business deal, every political alliance, every social interaction is going to be viewed through the lens of this ongoing conflict. Your children, when they eventually arrive, will grow up knowing that there's another family out there that considers your marriage an insult to their honour. They'll inherit not just their father's lands and titles, but also his enemies and grudges. Your romantic drama will become their political reality. But here's the part that would really break you. After all this chaos, violence, and political manoeuvring, you might discover that you don't actually like your new husband very much. All that time spent dealing with external pressures and family expectations, and nobody ever bothered to find out if you and Sir Geoffrey are actually compatible as human beings. You're stuck in a marriage that was arranged more like a military alliance than a romantic partnership, with a man who might be perfectly nice but shares none of your interests, values, or sense of humour. And you can't just get divorced and try again, because medieval divorce was about as common as unicorns and significantly more complicated. So there you have it, why you absolutely would not survive a medieval love triangle. Between the political pressure, the sanctioned violence, the family expectations, and the long-term consequences that could affect multiple generations, you'd be lucky to make it through the experience with your sanity intact, let alone your life. Modern dating might be complicated, but at least when someone ghosts you, they're not literally trying to make you disappear forever. Sweet dreams, and remember to subscribe if you enjoyed this little journey through romantic hell. Sleep tight and be grateful that the worst thing you have to worry about in your love life is whether someone will text you back, not whether they'll challenge your current partner to a duel at dawn.